Same thing.
Hey guys, what is going on? In this video, we're going to take a look at the NCEA Level 1 Tables, Equations, and Graphs assessment from 2020. Now, I haven't been through this assessment just yet. I haven't looked at it, so I don't know what kinds of questions will pop up. So as I go through it, I'm going to be verbalizing my thoughts and also presenting it sort of in a teaching kind of way with extra information. So these questions will take me a little bit of time to get through. So I will split this video into 4 different parts. The first part will be question 1, part 2, question 2, and part 3 will be question 3. And then finally we'll do a 4th part, which will be marking to see how well I got through the work. So let's get straight into it. So we're going to start off with the front page. As usual, we have here that it's level 1, it's from NCEA, nothing interesting there. Tables, equations, and graphs, we are setting the correct exam. It is from 2020 and there are 4 credits for this. All of this stuff you should be going through with your teacher well before the exam, so make sure you do understand what all of this stuff is about. So let's get straight into the first question. Now I will be writing down on my pad, so I'll be facing downwards as I go through these, and on occasion I may need to bring out the calculator. So let's see what we can do. Question 1. Give the equation of the graph shown below. So the first thing we want to do when we are doing these kinds of problems is first recognize what kind of graph it is. Now this one is a straight line graph, so you should know that straight line graph has the equation form y equals mx plus c. First thing, can we actually find what c is from this graph? It doesn't look like it. The c would be the y-intercept, which is somewhere up here. We can't actually see that high up. The graph doesn't go that high up. So we're going to have to do some other bits of thinking. The next thing is let's find some points that exist on the graph. So the graph goes through all of these different points here, and some easy points to pick out are, well, there's one here at 2, 4. Let's put some dots that show we're going from 2 on the x-axis and 4 on the y-axis. We also have another one here. So that's, what's that, 3 on the x-axis and 1 on the y-axis. So that's 3, 1. And another one right here at 1, 7. 1, 7. So I'm just going to put all of this into a table, starting with 1, 2, and 3 from our x values. That's these values here. And they correspond to, well, 1 is 7, 2 is 4, 3 is 1, and now we can start getting to work on what our gradient is from here. So our gradient is, if we're going up here in ones, which in this case we are, then our gradient is what this is skipping by. So we go from 7 to 4, that's -3. 4 to 1, again, that's -3. So we have here our gradient m of -3. So our equation starts with y equals -3 x, but we still have this plus c on the end. Here's a quick way to figure out what that plus c is. We start off with our 1 value and we go backwards until we get to 0. Well, that's just one step. That's nice and easy. So this time we're going backwards. Let's go back 1 step. So it was -3 going forwards 1 step. Going back 1 step would be +3. So we end up with 10. 10, 7, 4, 1. It follows the same pattern. So our plus c on the end is 10. There's our equation. Y equals -3x plus 10. Okay. We have 3 friends, Anadu, Barman, and Kale. They're about to start saving. Each friend has a different savings plan. They want to compare how much they'll save over the next 9 years. None of the friends will withdraw any money from their savings plan at any stage. Anadu puts a small amount of money into a bank at the start of his savings plan. His money will gain compound interest on this amount at the end of each year. His plan, I'm just going to rewrite this as S equals 50 50 times 1.3 to the power of t. I like to rewrite the equations in my own handwriting, first off, because I can read my own handwriting better than I can read this Times New Roman. And secondly, so that when I scan back for it, I can see exactly where it is. S is the amount in savings, and T is the number of years since the plan started. How much money did he put into his savings plan at the start? Now, at the start, that is when T equals 0. So we have S equals 50 times 1.3 to the power of 0. That's the 0th year, the beginning of the savings. Now, 1.3 to the power of 0, anything except for 0, to the power of 0 is 1. So all of this is just 1. And we're left with 50 times 1 is S equals 50. There's our answer. I'm going to box that so the marker can easily find what my answer is. Next up, Barman does not want to use a bank. Instead, he plans to put his money in a well-hidden shoebox. He puts $50 into the shoebox at the start of his savings plan. He will not receive any interest because shoeboxes don't give interest, but he will put an extra $40 at the end of each year. He's not going to end up with much money. Write an equation that represents Barman's savings plan. Okay, so in this case, he's putting in $40 each year, starting with $50. So 40 in the first year, 40 after 2 years, 40 after 3 years. So that's 40 times the number of years. But he also starts with $50, so let's give him $50 at the start. That's how much his savings will be. Box that. That's the answer. You want to make sure that the marker can readily see what your answer is. Don't use a red pen, though. Red pen, reserve that for the marker. Don't use red pen. The details of Cale's savings plan are shown in this table below. He already has $100 in his bank when the friends start their comparisons. So it's a good start, starting with a large amount of money. Okay, so it doesn't actually have the 0th year here, so I'm going to pop it in. So at year 0, he starts with $100. After year 1, he adds on $10. After year 2, or at the end of year 2, he adds on $11. At the end of year 3, he adds on $12.10. Now we have to find a relationship between these numbers here and something that's going on here. Now if we take a look, we have $10, which is 10% of 100. $11 is 10% of 110. $12.10 is 10% of $121. So each time we're actually adding on 10%. Now this isn't $10 plus $10 plus 10%. It's just plus 10% each year. So at year 4, we're going to add to this number here. We're going to add like $13.31. So adding $13.31 to this, we get, I think, $146.23, I think. I'm not really sure. I will check that on the calculator. But first, let's write an equation that represents Cale's saving plan. Okay, so we started with $100. Then after year 1, we added 10% of $100. Then after year 2, we had this plus 10% of that. So each year we have $100, starting off with $100. Then to that, we are adding 1, that's our $100, plus 10%. And we'll do that every year. Let's just simplify the inside brackets. We start with $100, we multiply that by 1.1, and raise that to the power of t. So that is our savings plan. S equals 100, that's our original money. Multiply that by 10, adding 10% each year. That's how we write that. That's our equation. And just to double check if we are correct, I'm going to open up our calculator. So in the calculator, we are going to calculate from our run menu. We're going to see if this formula is correct. So we start with $100. Now I'm going to multiply that by 1.1 to the power of, and now I'm going to choose one of these numbers. So I'm going to choose number 3, and our answer should be $133.10. Perfect. Now let's see how good my mental math was. I'm just going to delete the previous number and change that to power of 4. $146.41. I got that a little bit wrong, so let's just update that. Delete this, and that was that 46 cents? Yeah, 41 cents. Okay, now we're going to keep on adding 10% to that. So we can type in answer multiplied by 1.1. Press the execute button. That's going to be our next value. I'm going to round that to 2 decimal places because we are working in dollars. Now I'm just going to push the equals sign a few times. So we've got our 161 goes here. We want 1, 2, 3, 4 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to copy these details into the table. Okay, so I've got all of the numbers in the table, and I'm just going to put a note here that numbers in the table are rounded because we are working with money. Something like that. Numbers in the table are rounded to 2 decimal places because we're using dollars. Okay, anything below that? There is not. Let's go to the next page. A fourth friend, Deli, also decides to start saving into a bank account. The graph on the next page shows Deli's savings plan. That's over here. The equation for Deli's saving plan is 10t minus 2 to the power of 2 plus $40. Using tables, equations, and graphs, compare the amount saved by all of the friends who are using banks to save. So we're not going to use barman at various stages during the 9 years. All the graphs in this question can be considered to be continuous. Okay, so let's just write out each of the equations. So we have, let's start with, what's her name? Anadu. Anadu's equation was 50 times 1.3 to the power of t. 50 times, let's start with s equals. S equals 50 times 1.3 to the power of t. Kale. Their equation was s equals 100 times 1.1 to the power of t, and their equation is, at the top, s equals 10 times t minus 2 of 2 plus 40. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. Okay, so first off, let's make some notes about this. Araru has less, what would you call it, capital. Capital is the starting amount of money you have in your bank. I think it's spelled like that, I'm not entirely sure. Capital than Kale, but both use an exponential function. Kale's interest is higher than Anaru's. The interest, by the way, is this on the end. We have 30% interest for Anaru and 10% interest for Kale. Kale's interest is, and let's just chuck that in as well. Kale's interest, oh shoot, I said higher than Anaru's. I meant lower, is lower. So Kale's interest is 10%, Anaru's is 30%. Anaru has less capital, just going back to the beginning, $50. Then Kale has $100, but both use exponential. So I would write that out properly, but using evidence, that's these monies here to state the difference. And we also see that Deli has a completely different function. Deli's savings plan is a quadratic. Can see that their initial amount, their capital, was $40, and their interest rate, difficult to calculate. Okay, what else can we see? That's pretty much all I can see from the equations. Let's move on to the graphs now. So for the graphs, we're going to put in the year for each of them, and then Anaru's. Remember, we don't need to do barman's because barman is not using a bank, so we're going to switch to Kale and Deli, and we're not going to show barman. So the time, let's put in all of the years. So there's all of our details. Now we need to put in how much money they would have at the end of each year. I'm just going to push this across to line it up. Okay, so let's see Anaru's, which is way back here. 50 times 1.3 to the power of t. So in our calculator, let's type in 50 times 1.3 to the power of, well, we're not going to put into the power of 0 because that's just going to be $50, because 1.3 to the power of 0 is 1 and 50 times 1 is 50. Let's do to the power of 1, $65 after year 1. What about to the power of 2? $84.50. To the power of 3, $109.85. Okay, so that is the slow way of doing it. Another slow way is if we just multiply this by 1.3, 142.81. Press equals again, 185.65. So again, that's the slow way of doing it. Instead, we're going to do it a different way. Go to the menu option, and we're going to go to the table function. Now in this table function, we're going to write all three equations. So we're going to start off with Anaru's 50 times 1.3 to the power of t. But in this case, t is x. Press the execute button. Next up, we have Kale. Kale's equation was, is this Kale? Yeah, that's Kale there. 100 times 1.1 to the power of t, but again, t is x. Make sure you put that power button in. And our last one was Delhi. Delhi's equation is here. So let's pop that in. 10 multiplied by t, but t is x, minus 2 squared plus 40. Okay, so we've got all three equations now. We can press execute and we can see all three answers, or all, what will it be, 30 answers pop up for us. Actually, if we go down, we only get to the 5th year and we don't get the 1st year or the 0th year. So let's go back and press the set button. Now the set button is above F5, so press F5. We're going to start at year 0 and we're going to end at year 10. The step will be 1, so that's stepping up in 1 year intervals instead of like half year intervals. And we press table, and there is all of our details. Okay, just got to quickly copy all of this into the table. Okay, there is all of our savings for each of the participants. Now we're going to, they don't leave us much room here, do they? We're going to add in a little bit of what we can see from this table. So first off, it's really hard to read this table. There's numbers all over the place. Don't really like looking at tables, but we can see that Delhi goes down before they go up. So they lose money before they increase money. Perhaps an interesting investment going on there. But I really can't tell what's going on with this. So instead, I'm going to go over to the table and draw in some details on the table. So first off, let's look at time 0 for each of the participants. Now this line here was Delhi's line. So we start at 80, then we go down to 50, then 40, and then 50, and so on. Let's put in Kale's. I'll put that in. Let's go with pink. Kale starts at $100. Then after year 1, they get $110. That's 110 is there. Then year 2, they get $121. So there's 120, a little bit more than 120. That's probably a bit too much. So very, very close to 120. Next is 133.10. 235. Okay. So that is, who's that? Kale's graph. Let's draw a nice straight line that joins all of this together. And by straight, I don't mean like with a ruler. I mean join the dots with a nice smooth line. Let's see how well I can do that. Not very great start. I'm actually going to go down to here. There we go. That's not a bad line for Kale's savings plan. I'm going to do the same thing for Anaru's saving plan, just plotting each of these points on this graph, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so I've got all of the points labeled on for, I think that was Anaru. So let's just zoom out a little bit and see if we can connect those with a nice smooth line. As you're doing this in the exam, just do your best. You can just kind of connect the dots and then smooth them out, but it is a good idea to start with pencil, sketch it out, and then draw it with a nice straight line with your pen afterwards. Shoot. I accidentally turned my tablet off. Okay, and we're back. Okay, there we go. That's my attempt at a nice straight line. I am just going to nudge a few little bits and pieces and zoom in to see how well we did. Oops, that was a bit too much of a nudge there. What's going on with this point? That point doesn't look right at all. Let's take a look. That was year 3. Year 3 is 109.85, and I actually have it at 119. So we actually have to drop this down to here. I made a little mistake there. So let's drop that down. There we go. That's much smoother. So I think we have all of our bits labeled on there. Oh, labeled. Good reminder for myself. This one is Anaru's savings plan. Okay, so let's now compare these three. So we see that even though Kale had a higher starting value of $100, his savings was actually the least because his interest rate wasn't that high. 10% was not that high. Now in the real world, 10% is quite high. So yeah, this is a good savings. But with Anaru's 30% savings, he just skyrocketed. And then Delhi's savings plan also really went high really quickly. So we just need to write that out in a sentence. There isn't much room here, so I'm just gonna write it on this graph. So I've got a little bit of a conclusion there, stating that Kale's is not as good as the other two. Now I'm just going to compare the other two. And I think I'm pretty much done. I'm going to leave it there. That I think was, yeah, that was the end of question 1. So that's how I would do those. So let's end the video here, and I'll see you in the next video for question number 2.